Good evening and welcome to Monsters Among Us. I am your guide, Derek Hayes. Howdy folks, and welcome to another installment of the show. I can't thank you enough for being here with us tonight. And you know, I'd like to tease what we have coming up, but where's the surprise in that? So just trust me when I say tonight's stories are downright blood-curdling. And since we're no nonsense and no filler here at Monsters Among Us, let's just get right into the action. Beginning with this unsettling entry from Cody in Minnesota. You might want to make sure your doors are locked before you hear this one.
Hi Derek, this is Cody. This event happened in Coon Rapids in about 2015-ish, but I seen the black-eyed children apparently. This time I didn't know what the black-eyed children were or what they did or anything like that, but to get into my story, I was living with my grandmother in Coon Rapids. She had spinal meningitis, so I needed to help her with her health. And I was getting ready to go to work, so I took a shower, and as I had my towel wrapped around me, I walked out of the bathroom thinking my grandma was home and nobody was there, but two kids ran past me as I opened the bathroom door and ran straight into my bedroom, and I could hear them jumping on my bed. I turned to go to my bedroom to get my clothes that I needed for work, which were in my wardrobe my grandmother gave me, and it was on the opposite side of my bedroom, so I had to walk all the way through the bedroom to get to that wardrobe to get that pile of clothes. I ran in there, I grabbed my clothes, and as I touched my pile of clothes, they looked at me as they were jumping on the bed, and as one would come up, the other one would go down, if that makes sense. So it was almost like they were on a teeter-totter, but they were just jumping on the bed, and they were wearing these old, like, pilgrim-y clothes. Like, the boy had suspenders on, and the girl had a white, flowery dress on, and they were both blonde. They almost looked like they could have been twins, but their eyes were just black. So black, in fact, you can't even see, like, anything inside there. It's just an abyss. And they both look at me and they go, "Come play with us." And I freaked out and dropped my towel right there in my bedroom, and I ran outside in the middle of Coon Rapids, butt naked, into my truck and got dressed and left for work. I was 2 hours early to work, and I would not return back to that house until my grandma called me and told me she was home. Since then, I've looked into what the black-eyed children do, and what I've read is that they invite the devil into your life. But yeah, I've been a long-time listener of the show, and I love it. Please continue what you're doing. Thanks, Derek. Bye.
Thank you, Cody. Now that's a first for me. Actually, there are several firsts for me in this story. The first time hearing of BEKs, or black-eyed kids, entering a home without being invited or let in. It's the first time I've heard of them wearing period clothing, like what was described in the story. And it's the first time I've ever heard of them doing something uncharacteristic, like jumping on a bed. Now, Cody suggested that these dark-eyed enigmas may be demonic in nature. And you know, that's a popular opinion. Other proposed origins are that they're vampires, on account of the black eyes and pale skin, and that whole invitation thing. And some claim that they're spirits, on account of them disappearing out of nowhere. while others have connected these chilling children to gray aliens, or alien-human hybrids, and even cults, or just bored pranksters. It's all been posited. Now, as far as them being invited, almost every other story I've ever heard of has included that detail, that these dead-eyed punks need to ask to come inside. And they usually try to use your phone or wait out a storm. Well, Delaney did find one story that does seem to detail what happens when you let these little monsters inside. The story is from a mini documentary on the BEK by Freaky What on YouTube. And essentially, the story tells of an elderly couple inviting two black-eyed kids into their home during a snowstorm. Once inside, the wife noticed the children's pale skin and black eyes. When her husband saw the children, his nose began to bleed immediately and violently. A few days later, the husband was diagnosed with an aggressive form of skin cancer, and the wife herself began experiencing chronic nosebleeds. Their lives were completely ruined. It's even been rumored that their 4 cats mysteriously died, and that they somehow lost their life savings. So bad luck all around. So my advice here is not to let them in. Now, we did do some digging, hoping to find a few other examples of suspected BEKs jumping on beds or doing anything unusual like that, but we came up empty, though I don't doubt that there are stories like that out there. But until they're submitted, hopefully to our hotline, I'm afraid that's all I've got for this one. You can hear that full story about the elderly couple by visiting the show notes at monstersamonguspodcast.com. True or not, it's unsettling, and it's supposed to be true. Now, thank you again, Cody, for sharing your entry. And just a thought here, but maybe it's time to get a robe. Now, next up is a cryptid sighting from the Hoosier State. I still want to know what a Hoosier is. Well, Jesse, welcome to the program.
Hi, my name is Jessie. I just heard Dakota's story at the end of season 14, episode 18, and I have my own Indiana fox cryptid story to share. This happened in 2014 in Bloomington, Indiana, which is about an hour south of where Dakota's story took place. I was in the passenger seat of my mom's 1994 Blazer. It was just after sunset, and we were heading home from some event at my high school that night, with my friend David in the back seat. We had just turned onto a street by my house about a block away. It's not a rural area, it's in the city, in a historic neighborhood. And we were approaching a stop sign, but before we reached it, we saw something running towards us from the right side of the car, and my mom slammed on the brake. So we saw something running towards us. My mom slams on the brake and it looks at us for just a split second, and what I saw, it was the size of a man, but it looked like a fox or a dog standing on its hind legs. It had a long face with giant oversized ears that went past its shoulders, and it had short arms up by its chest, standing on its hind legs. When my mom slammed on the brakes, it looks at us, and then it dove right in front of the car, just seeming to disappear into the ground. We got out and looked for where it could have gone. My friend David hadn't seen any of it, and my mom and I didn't know what we saw, and we didn't know where it could have gone, but we didn't see anything there. We got back in the car, and without discussing it, we just went home and drew what we saw, and my mom and I both drew the same thing. some kind of dog face with long ears, standing on its hind legs. So thanks for giving me a place to share this story and connect with Dakota, who also maybe saw something similar. Sounds like the one he saw was shorter. He said about 3 feet, but this one I saw was probably 6 feet tall, and it just vanished. So that's my story. Thanks.
Thank you, Jesse. Now, I did a little digging and I didn't see anything anywhere about a Foxman in Indiana, but I do love the concept. And the call that Jesse is referring to, Dakota's entry, as Jesse said, it's from season 14, episode 18. And since I already dug up the call, here's a truncated version highlighting the actual sighting. Here's Dakota from Indiana.
I was driving down one of the local highways here, just north of North Salem, and I came around a corner, and running across the road was, I thought, a fox. It's about 3-4 foot long, red hair, but it was bipedal. It was on its hind legs running across the road. I was still just trying to figure it out.
They sound awfully similar to me. And only about 60 miles apart. It's pretty interesting. Now I'll keep my ears open for similar entries from that area. And if you know something I don't, listener, you'd better get a hold of me. Until then, thank you again to both Jesse and Dakota for sharing those fascinating entries.
And I think I love that. I think one thing we need to
Last in tomorrow's headline.
Even at 3-1, I can't bet them. Got to charge so legit. Should have that emergency fund.
Now our next story comes to us from my neck of the woods. Leslie from California. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Derek. My name is Leslie, and I am actually from East LA, Montebello, to be exact. I wanted to tell the story about when I was 14, 15 years old, and I was actually living in Chatsworth at the time. My mom was an RN and also very religious, so after work she would always go to these prayer groups. And I was always stuck having to take care of my younger sister and my younger brother. So one night my mom comes home pretty late. She brought groceries. And me being a snooty little teenager, my mom asked me to help her with the groceries, and I said, no, I don't want to help. I was upset because I had to stay there and babysit my siblings. So I went to my bedroom, and I was laying on my bed. Like I said, this was pretty late, maybe 11 o'clock at night, and I was laying on my bed, not asleep, but I think I was listening to music or reading a magazine, and all of a sudden, I feel something grab my legs, and the covers weren't on me, but they were on the bed, and they were towards my feet, and something just pulled me under my blankets. I felt something grab me. My door was open, so I would have seen my mom or my siblings if they came, if they walked into my bedroom. They did not walk into my bedroom. I started screaming and shouting. My mom runs in. She's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And I'm still under the covers. And my mom takes the covers off, and I'm crying, and I'm telling her, what just happened. And my mom, of course, being very religious, was like, it's probably the devil or something. Always. If anything bad ever happened in our house, it was always the devil. So after that, a couple months passed by, and my bedroom was right next to the kitchen. And one night, I'm in my bedroom, and at this point, I had moved my bed to a different side of my bedroom, away from where originally, the first thing happened. So it was late at night, I was asleep, and all of a sudden I hear this huge boom on my wall towards my headboard, and we had a really long hallway. My room was the first one, when you entered the hallway, and my mom's room was all the way at the end. And we had 6 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. And I get out of bed, and I'm bolting down the hall to my mom's bedroom. My mom was already halfway down the hall because she heard the big boom. We don't know what it was. You know, nothing was broken, nothing, like, we couldn't see anything, that something fell. We still, to this day, have no idea what's going on, what happened, where that big boom came from. But this house that we lived in, there was an older man that died there, and I don't know if anything had to do with that. That is my experience. But I love your podcast. You make work so much better and easier in the mornings when I listen to your podcast, and I hope you can use my story. And if anybody else has had similar experiences, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Now think about this. When you were scared as a kid, where is one of the safest places you can think of? Under the blankets. Now, having heard what happened to Leslie, I'm not so certain that it's the safest place anymore. I'd be afraid of who was under there with me. And the loud booming sounds, related or not, it sounds like there was something strange going on in that home. And we thank you, Leslie, for sharing those details here with us. And you heard what she said, folks. If this has happened to you, we want to hear about it. Or if you have any true paranormal story, call it into our hotline at 888-608-NIGHT. That's 888-608-NIGHT. Or record your story on your phone as a voice memo and email it to me at monstersamonguspodcast.com. And don't forget to submit your hometown legends. The clock is ticking on that one. And the amusement worker special. Don't forget that one either. Now, how about a story from a long and darkened road? Anonymous from Texas. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Derek. I'm calling in from Texas. I'll just choose to remain anonymous, but I'm a new listener to the show. A friend of mine very recently turned me on to it. And so I've been going back, just kind of listening from the most recent backward. And just listened to the Mirrored Men titled episode where there was a caller that called in about a UFO sighting, something along those lines, and then you covered a couple of other sightings that happened in Texas. And I have to say it gave me chills to hear some of these accounts because I haven't experienced very much in my life that I would consider to be paranormal. But back in 2009, I was going to college in Huntsville, and a friend of mine and I were driving along Highway 105, which goes from Huntsville to Beaumont. We were going to Beaumont. It was very late in the evening in Texas. So this isn't far away from some of the other accounts that you mentioned in that episode. We saw a triangular shape, so it was 3 lights hovering right above the pine trees, silent. There was no sound. We drove and saw it driving, turned the car off, got out to take a closer look, and it was very close, not very far above us, but there was no audible sound coming from it, which, just really kind of floored me. It sounds very, very similar to some of the other accounts that were mentioned in that episode. And, we looked at it. It sat there for at least 30 seconds, just hovering silently, and then silently went vertical until we could not see it anymore. And, about 10 minutes later, we stopped off at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. And, I was talking to the clerk there, just saying, like, man, you'd never believe what I just saw. And before I could even say anything, he immediately knew what I was going to say. So it's very funny how it seems like around that stretch of road in that part of Texas, the same occurrence has happened multiple times. And I didn't even know it until today when hearing that episode that it's happened to other people right in that same spot. So just thought it was very interesting. Appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate getting that knowledge on it. So Thanks, and thanks for everything. Bye.
Thank you, caller. Now, believe it or not, that area also has an infamous UFO encounter. One that ruined the lives of Betty Cash and Vicki Landrum. You may remember our previous coverage on the Cash Landrum UFO event, but for those that don't, in 1980, Betty Cash, Vicki Landrum, and her grandson Colby Landrum were driving outside of Dayton, Texas, when they encountered a terrifying UFO that hovered menacingly above them, emitting a blinding, searing light. The craft's intense heat and radiation left them with severe burns and mysterious health issues, as if they had been scorched by unseen flames. The ominous craft disappeared as suddenly as it appeared, leaving behind an eerie silence in a wake of medical issues that some claim led to the death of the women. Now, if you would like to hear more on this case, I've covered it several times over the years, but most recently on Season 17, Episode 5. Go give that a listen. Now, I don't know exactly where our caller was when he had his sighting, but chances are good that he drove right past the spot where Betty Cash and Vicki Landrum saw their light-emitting anomaly. The road in which the Cash Landrum event occurred is a mere 8 miles from the state route our caller was on when he had his encounter, which is close enough for me, especially given the size of Texas. Just be grateful, caller, that your experience didn't end the way the 1980 encounter did. It was awful what happened to those women, and receiving no help from the military. It's downright shameful. Anyway, that's an argument for another time. For now, thanks again, caller, for sharing that story.
Green, gold, and silver, or broke. Referee whistle. Out of the grave. Against a team that doesn't have that.
I think he was on point. We tend to forget.
University.
Now our next tale keeps us in the state of Texas. Lisa, it's your turn to terrify.
Hi, Derek. This is Lisa calling from Fort Worth, Texas. I called once before and submitted a couple of stories that you featured on your healthcare workers segment. I'm calling today to tell you about my experience in my childhood home in rural South Texas. This took place in the summer of 2000. I have to preface the story by describing my parents' property and how it was accessed. Our house was built by my parents and set on 40 acres of land and surrounded by barbed wire fencing and a gate that was kept closed, with an additional hurricane fence surrounding the house itself to create a front and backyard for our dogs. We had about 8 dogs at the time, several of which were large guard dogs that all lived in the smaller fenced yard that surrounded both the front and rear entrance to the house. Needless to say, no one could approach either door without us being alerted by the dogs first. It was late at night, probably about 2 a.m., and I was awake talking to my boyfriend at the time on the phone. My older brother was asleep in my bedroom, which was directly above the family room and rear entrance to our house, and I was in my extra room, which was above the garage and had a window that faced the driveway. The quiet night was abruptly interrupted by 3 loud and aggressive knocks on the back door. My brother shot straight up in bed, and we both looked at each other and said, "Did you hear that?" Immediately after the knock started, all of our dogs went nuts, growling and barking. I ran to the window overlooking the driveway and confirmed that there was no car outside, while my brother looked out my bedroom windows, which overlooked the back entrance and patio roof, and saw no one as well. He was a Marine on leave at home, so he grabbed his weapon and ran downstairs to search around the perimeter of the house while I watched out the windows. Neither of us ever saw anyone. The baffling thing is that my mom and dad, who were just down the hall from that rear entrance, heard nothing and never woke up through the whole thing. I've often wondered if we were the only ones meant to hear it. There has been another incident of knocks years later at that same house, as well as several other strange happenings, but those will have to be stories for another time. I hope you can use this. Keep up the great work. Your podcast is my absolute favorite.
Thank you, Lisa. No, I've been there. I was watching Saturday Night Live late one night when I was probably 12 or 13 years old. The middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere. And suddenly, and the screen door. I leapt to my parents' room. My dad rushed out of bed and circled the house with a rifle in hand, but no cause was ever found. To this day, I'm still convinced it was a person that pounded on the door, and he, or possibly she, disappeared into the woods that surrounded our house. So the concept is scary as hell, Lisa, so I feel for you. But it also makes for a great story. So there's your silver lining. And thank you again for sharing. Now, folks, your chance to take advantage of our Dogman Days of Summer sale is waning. Visit monstersamonguspodcast.com and click the shop tab. Pick yourself up some spooky MAU gear before the holiday season. From now until the beginning of spooky season, which is fast approaching, everything in our shop is 15% off. All sales go directly back to the show, printed by our guy Nick, and shipped by my lovely wife, Sarah. No big third-party companies here. Again, that's monstersamonguspodcast.com and click the shop tab. Now, not all mysteries are terrifying. Some are downright awe-inspiring, or maybe even jaw-dropping. Sort of like this unusual experience by Sean out of Illinois.
Hey Derek, this is Sean. I'm an independent filmmaker located in the northern Illinois area, north of Chicago, up near the Wisconsin border. I am a Christian, so I do believe in a spiritual realm, although I also believe that it often stays pretty well hidden, doesn't show itself that often. So I'm fairly skeptical, and I've really never had much of anything fantastic ever happen to me, anything paranormal. There's only one kind of weird story that I just can't explain, so I thought I'd tell it here. Back in 2015, I was a youth leader in the youth group at my church, and they were having a guys camp out in a forest preserve, not a very large forest, surrounded by suburbs, so not that out in the wilderness or anything. But they needed leaders to supervise, so I was one of the leaders who went. It was a mid-August evening around 9 p.m. I'm sitting by the fire. Suddenly I really have to use the restroom. So there's a porta potty like a half mile away, but I don't really feel like walking. So I just decided to go in the brush. Now it was a cloudy night. There was no moon, there were no stars. And once I got away from the fire, it was almost completely pitch black. I walked out into some deep brush, for privacy. Suddenly I am surrounded by tiny little white, flashing, blinking lights. They look kind of like fireflies, but smaller. And at that time of the summer, there were no more fireflies. So I was very confused. And the first thing that came to my mind was, oh, these must be glowworms. I've heard about glowworms my whole life, never seen them. So I assumed maybe there were all these little glowworms in the branches of the brush all around me. And somehow I had activated all of them to start blinking. So I looked all around me. They were blinking all around me. And about 20 seconds after they started blinking, they all stopped. It went back to pitch blackness. I was very confused, and I actually walked back to the campsite, and then later I walked back to that area and looked around because I wanted to see, what is this? It must have been some sort of natural thing, and there was no more blinking lights. To this day, I have no idea what it was. It's the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me. They could have been lightning bugs, unseasonal lightning bugs that just decided to blink for a short amount of time. There were just so many of them. I've never seen that many lightning bugs altogether. I guess they could have been glowworms, but again, they blinked for a short time and then just vanished. The only other thing I can think is that it was some sort of thing with my eyes, that because I was in pitch blackness, my eyes just played tricks on me and just showed me all these flashing lights that weren't there. But it was so real. Like, I squinted my eyes, I closed my eyes, and when I opened them, they were still flashing. So it didn't really feel like something happening in my eyeballs. Anyway, I have no idea what that was, but if you have any explanation, I would love to hear it. All right, thanks again, Derek. I look forward to hearing what you think it might have been.
Thank you, Sean. Although this isn't really a quote-unquote scary story, I really do like it, because I really enjoy mysteries like this. And it's obviously not ghost or UFO related, but it is unexplained, and it is something that's above the normal. Now, what caused these glowing specks of light? That I do not know. I would assume, like Sean did, that it was some lightning bug or glowworm or maybe even some bioluminescent fungus or something. But I feel like any of those explanations would have easily been determined, just like Sean said. And yet, here we are. So maybe someone out there listening can tell Sean and I what that was that he encountered. I'm sure he would love to hear from you as much as I would. But until then, thanks again, Sean, for calling in. Now I have a few shorter stories to run through before our next ad break. So let's start with an eerie sound in the dark from Dustin in Missouri.
Hey, Derek. This is Dustin from Missouri, and I've been listening to your podcast here for a few months now. But anyways, just wanted to call you. This just happened like maybe 10 minutes ago. I was sitting out here on my porch. Like I said, I kind of live in the middle of BFE, Missouri, and you hear all kinds of animals: coyotes, wolves, what have you. So anyway, I was sitting out here, and initially I thought I heard some coyotes kind of off in the distance. And, that's pretty normal around here, whenever. And to the left of me, there's this big field. And I lived out here for 26, 27 years. I have never heard something like this before. It literally sounded like, I don't know, a human wolf elk mix. The thing is how I can describe it, and it was deafeningly loud. There was I'm sitting out here on my porch, and they clearly heard it in the house, and my dogs were going nuts when they heard this. And like I said, I was sitting hearing this really loud noise, and then over to the right, I heard what sounded like some red wolves or some type of wolves, howling, like they howled. And then to the left of me, I heard that really loud sound again. Then over to the right, and it just kind of went back and forth for a couple of minutes, and then it just went just dead silent. And yeah, I'm not going to say it was like a dog man or something like that, but I don't know. It was strange, and it just, like I said, I've lived out here 26, 27 years. Never heard anything like that in my life. I don't know, it just really disturbs me. But yeah, I just wanted to call in and tell you that. Love the show. I hope you put this on one of your shows. But have a good day, Derek. Bye.
Thank you, Dustin. Now, if you don't mind, let's take a moment to break this down. Now, Dustin mentioned that the sound was reminiscent of an elk's bugle. That's this sound. Now, that clip on behalf of Harry Cullen's Photography on YouTube. And there's no doubt that it's spooky stuff. I wouldn't want to hear that in a foggy forest. But that's exactly what you can do in Missouri, because there are a few elk herd roaming parts of the Show Me State. So that's suspect number one. The second is a critically endangered species of canid called the red wolf, a smaller coyote-sized version of the wolf. Now, the red wolf is indigenous to Missouri, but it went extinct there in the 1950s, though there have been some reports that this animal is returning to parts of the state. So this one isn't impossible. And if you're curious, a red wolf sounds like this. And I'll keep the sound low. I know there are some pups out there listening. Now, that sound was courtesy of the Wolf Conservation Center on YouTube. And of course, we have the coy wolf, the coyote-wolf hybrid that's quickly spreading across the eastern part of the continent. And for reference, the coy wolf sounds an awful lot like the red wolf. So I'm gonna skip playing that clip. I'm sure that last one already has everyone's pets in a tizzy. And I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't point out one more connection here. There is a legendary creature from the state of Missouri that fits the description oh so well. And Howling is right there in the job description. They call it the Ozark Howler. The physical description seems to be all over the place. But most say that it's cat-like, but huge like a bear. Thick dark fur, long fangs, sharp teeth, and a set of razor-sharp horns on its head. It gets its name based on the long mournful moans that it produces on cold Ozark mountain nights. The Ozark Howler. Now, Dustin didn't say which part of Missouri he was in. BFE was as specific as he got. But the Ozarks do cover nearly half the state, so chances are about 50-50 that he's at least in the right region. Now, I'm not gonna say that it was the howler, but I am saying that there is lore out there to support a sighting of that sort of animal. And about the only way I know to verify what Dustin heard is some sort of sound comparison. Now, we've already played our likely suspects, but now, thanks to a recording made all the way back in 2012 by Devin Dick, we just might have an Ozark howler sample. This was recorded on April 17th, 2012 at 1:24 in the morning. According to the description, the howling had been going on for an hour, and every dog in the neighborhood was going crazy. How about it, Dustin? Is this what you heard that night? Now I'll play this clip twice, the original once, and then my attempt at cleaning it up a bit. But honestly, this one is pretty rough. Whatever it is, it kind of makes you not want to go outside at night. Now, I hope these sounds help narrow down your options, Dustin, and we thank you for calling in. Now, real quick before we continue, a reminder that our film Shadows in the Desert High Strangeness in the Borrego Triangle is available for rent or purchase on Apple TV, Amazon Prime, and a bunch of other places. Visit borregotriangle.com to see your viewing options. And if you've seen the film, leave us a review. Wait, leave us a good review. We could use all the help that we can get. Oh, and for my UK, Australia, and New Zealand listeners, finally I have some movement on distribution there. The paperwork has been signed and things are rolling. Our distributor tells me we can expect the film to be available there by the end of the year. I'm sorry it's taken this long, but we'll eventually get the film out to you guys. And once we do, I need you to all show up and give the film the numbers it not only deserves, but that I promised it would get. So you better watch it twice, just in case. Alright, I have room for one more quick call before we head off to the break. And luckily for us, that's exactly what Ivy has in store for us.
Hi, this is Ivy. I was listening to your podcast at work. I'm on season 6 now. But this girl had told a story on season 5, episode 15, I'm pretty sure. I can't remember specifics, but it was about a music box playing, and it reminded me of something that happened to me. And I had completely forgotten about it, so I knew I would forget about it again. So I wanted to call and tell you before I forgot. So it was early this year, January, I think. And I was extremely pregnant and had to be bedridden. Well, my daughter's father, we'll call him S, he had asked me to go with him to his mom's house. She had broken her foot and needed help. So I was like, that's fine, like as long as I can just stay laying down. Well, he was out in her kitchen making, I think, dinner for her. I can't remember exactly. But he was out in her kitchen making dinner, and I was in the bedroom. Now, I didn't move a lot. I was very sick, and so I pretty much just stayed laying down. She lives in a trailer. It's a double-wide trailer, and I thought maybe, like, if the trailer rocked or something, that this would have happened, but I don't think so. So I was laying down, and it was really quiet, and I was trying to sleep. Well, all of a sudden, the music box up on the top shelf of her bookcase started to spin and play. Well, that kind of freaked me out. And so I went and I talked to S about it. And apparently his dad had passed away a year prior to then and had bought his mom that music box. And apparently she said anytime she's in there, it plays. So I just thought that was really sweet and kind of cool. Like I said, I don't know, maybe a big truck had passed and I just didn't realize it and it rocked the trailer and it was spinning around, or I don't know. But I thought it was really cool and I thought it was a good story. And I absolutely love your podcast. I still listen to it while I'm at work. All right, bye.
Thank you, Ivy. Now that's a touching story. I don't know if the music box really was haunted by the deceased husband/father, but I certainly like to think that it was. Because I shudder to think who else might be haunting it. Thank you again, Ivy, for the heartwarming entry.
Incentivizes developers or dynamic playmaking strategy. Don't repeat the same cycle.
What is referred to in the saying?
Down the home stretch, and I have a couple of good ones to round us out, beginning with this unsettling experience by Rebecca in Georgia.
Hi, my name is Rebecca, and I'm from Savannah, Georgia. Although I pretty much grew up in Tampa, Florida, well, most of my life. But anyways, this happened. The first incident happened in Tampa. Okay, so I'm 43 years old now, and I remember this very vividly. I have a really good memory. I remember learning how to walk. I'm one of those weird, crazy people that can remember really, really far back. So this incident happened when I was probably 3.5, 4, and my brother was about 1.5 years younger than me, so I remember he was in diapers, and we shared the same room, and he had a bed on the right side of the room, and mine was on the left side of the room, and directly facing his bed was our closet, and our closet was really shallow, but pretty tall, and it had, the folding doors on it. It makes me nervous thinking about it. So I was playing, I remember this extremely well. My brother had Star Wars sheets, I had Rainbow Bright sheets, and I was playing with my Strawberry Shortcake doll. Okay, that doesn't really matter, but I am playing with my doll, and I hear my brother, make a muffled whine. And I was a mother hen, so I was always, taking care of my little brother. And when I heard him whine, I didn't look up, but I was like, it's okay, buddy, because we were supposed to be in bed. And I knew if he started crying, we'd get in trouble, for being up. But I'm like, it's okay, buddy, and then all of a sudden he starts crying more. And I asked what was wrong with him, and he didn't answer me, but he was sobbing. I put down my doll, I walk over there, and as I'm going over there, about halfway there, he points to the closet, and then he hit his face and started sobbing hysterically. And I remember stopping and following his finger to the closet, and what I saw was absolutely terrifying. It was in our closet, is what I can only describe as an extremely tall void of darkness in the shape of a man. He was well over 6.5 feet, probably closer to 7. And he was wearing a trench coat. And I don't remember if he had a hat because I was more drawn to his face, his mouth, and eyes. And I heard something like this on one of your shows, how the eyes were like a static color. Well, his were similar to that, but you know how when you look at the road, when there's heat waves on it, you can kind of see color swirls? His eyes and mouth were made of almost like a heat wave energy. The scary part is his mouth was wide open, like he was screaming at the top of his lungs, looking at me and my brother. And I was so terrified that I couldn't move, and I was standing up. This was not sleep paralysis. I could not move. I could not scream. I couldn't do anything. Mind you, my brother is hysterical by now, and I peed all over myself. That's how scared I was. I just peed. That isn't even the terrifying part. When I saw the man, of course I was terrified, but I looked down
and there is another one, almost like you would hold a dog on a leash. It was right next to the man's hand, next to his side, and it looked like it was about to take off in a race. It was in a position where it was about to run full force into me and my brother. I couldn't see any facial features. I couldn't see the mouth. I couldn't see the eyes or what have you. My brother was screaming in the meantime. I was absolutely traumatized by this, like terrified to the point where I didn't want to go to bed forever. Our parents rush in. I remember they were bikers, and they had that cold leather because I guess they were outside and had their leather jackets on. And my dad grabs me, my mom grabs my brother, and I remember my dad was holding me, and my head was just over his shoulder, how he was holding me, and he kept turning, and my eyes were facing the closet, and it was still there. And my parents couldn't see it. My brother was just in freaking shambles, like he was screaming. My parents never saw it, and of course, they were kind of mad at me for peeing, like I peed in the bed or something. I don't remember. But that is just where it began. That's the first experience I had. Later on, like a year later, we moved to Savannah, and I was, from then on, tormented by the Hat Man. Me and my brother were. He doesn't remember a lot of this, though, which is crazy, but he also doesn't remember when he was younger. I remember everything. So the Hat Man wouldn't always wear a hat, but he was always there. I would scream and beg my dad not to let me go to sleep at night, please. And he's like, it's just a dream. I'm like, no. For some reason, I called him Cottonhead. I don't know why. My child mind just created that name. I had to have a name to the enemy terrorizing my life. He never walked. He was always in a corner or gliding through the doorway. I remember one time I was laying in bed, and my bed was facing the door, and it was like he was on a skateboard sliding across the ceiling. And he was out in the hallway, and I saw his head and upper body slide, like he was laying on the ceiling, slide into the doorway and just stare at me. And I swear to you, his whole entire goal was to terrorize me, to make me have fear. I would have traumatic nightmares, like nightmares that this man was coming up and meat hooking my sister, like sticking a meat hook through her chest and hanging her on the back of a door. I was not allowed to watch scary movies, so this was not put into my head by anything other than this thing. Anyways, like I said, I was traumatized and terrorized by shadow people and the Hat Man specifically most of my childhood. So, hope you enjoy.
Thank you, Rebecca. What's the worst part of this experience? The tall creature, the gaping mouth, it hovering on the ceiling, the dog-like shadow entity, the screaming little brother, or the loss of bladder control? And what was that second entity anyway? I don't remember ever hearing a shadow dog story before. Though I bet there's some stories out there somewhere. Regardless of all that, it's a terrifying story. And we thank you again, Rebecca, for sharing it here with us. Well, folks, here's our final call of the main show. Now, this is one of those calls that are incredibly difficult to categorize. The only real descriptor for this call would be disturbing, I suppose. So please welcome Angie from the Gulf Coast to the program.
So hey, Derek and everybody listening, my name is Angie. I'm currently on the Gulf of Mexico where I live now. This starts out in a small town in Minnesota called Excelsior on the shore of Lake Minnetonka. And I apologize for my voice shaking. This just happened April 2024. Totally forgot about this. Okay. So what happened is I was about 12 years old, 13, whatever. So this would have been 1973, 74. In the middle of the night, I go use the bathroom. I'm scared to look in the mirror when I'm washing my hands because of the whole Bloody Mary ghosty thing, right? I look up in the mirror, and over my right shoulder, I see this old lady face. I think it's a lady. It's got like light-colored hair with shiny silver streaks in it, and it looked like it didn't have any eyes. And it had this long, craggly, old face and this wrinkly lips. It was just creepy ears. And I only glanced at it for a second. Of course, I ran into my room, got under the covers. I was terrified. I was scared to use that bathroom after that. So here it is, April 2024, and I'm at the laundromat doing laundry. My car's parked out here in the sun. I take a walk. I come back. I stick my key in the door because I'm going to unlock my car, get my laundry basket out, right? Looking back at me from the reflection in the glass. Oh, my God, I'm just shaking. Was that face, right? I freaked out. Drop my keys. I turn around. I mean, there's people all over here, right? Turn around and look. There's nobody behind me. I bend down, pick my keys up, look back in the window, and realize the reflection. The creepy old lady that I saw when I was 12, that was my reflection right now today in the window. I'm sorry. I'm like really freaked out. I mean, how do you time warp like that when you're 12? How do you see yourself when you're 62 years old? It's just a trip. Oh, what I thought was black eyes in the reflected mirror that I saw when I was a kid. I realized I have transition lenses on my glasses, so when I looked in there, what I was seeing was just the dark lenses of my glasses I wear today. Sorry, I'm freaking out, and I'm not a good storyteller, but thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Angie. You did a fine job sharing that unsettling tale. And I'm sorry the experience has you so shaken, but I do understand why it does. Now that said, I'm really not sure what to make of this. I'm literally at a loss for words. So I'm afraid I don't have much to offer here, Angie. But what I do have for you is a huge thank you, and all the positive thoughts that I can muster. Hopefully that's the first and only time you have an experience like that. But please do let us know if you happen to see the face, your face, again. Thank you for calling in, and thank you, listener, for tuning in this evening. It's a pleasure delivering these spooky stories to you each and every week, and I'm so grateful you're here to hear them. Now, Monsters Among Us is written and produced by me, Derek Hayes. Copyright Red Crow Media. Additional support is provided by Sarah Carter Hayes and Delaney Bowers. All media used in this production is done so under the protection of fair use. Be a lamb and follow us on social media. And check us out on YouTube while you're at it. Leave us a rate and review wherever that sort of thing is possible. And don't forget you can check out the show every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern, digitally, on the UNX Network. Visit unxnetwork.com to tune in. And finally, tonight's score was provided by Iron Cthulhu Apocalypse, Code.ag Music, and Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. And there we are, folks. Stick around until after the outro for some bonus material. Otherwise, I'll catch you all back here next week. Until then, keep it spooky and have a good night.
Our aim is to improve the quality of life.
We'll demolish your old hardscape for free.
If you get a phone call,
flash in our 4 pools.
Now tonight's secret entry is another of these calls that don't really fit neatly into one of the many paranormal categories. This may be abortation, but you can decide for yourself. Please welcome Jesse from my boyhood home of Ohio.
Hey, Derek, this is Jesse calling from Akron, Ohio. I was listening to season 15, episode 8. I believe his name was Brandon. He had some keys that he was searching for, and they ended up being right in front of him in the middle of the living room. And you just said that that was like a pretty common thing that
happens with ghosts and everything. And it just reminded me when I was younger, probably around, 12, 13 years old, my sister married my brother-in-law, and me and him were very close. Like, he took me under his wing and, showed me how to play sports and played video games with me. And, this was a guy who was like 18, had no reason to really hang out with me. So it was just really cool. He's always been like a actual brother to me. And so whenever they got married, I was in the wedding party, and the wedding gift that he had given us was a couple of buck knives. And so he gave me this one. It has like a red handle. It was so sharp, and it was one of my most prized possessions because it was just very, important to me. Me and him were really close. Obviously, me and my sister love each other very much, and it was just like perfect, So that was when I was about 13, cherished this knife, carried it with me everywhere, and I had the tendency to lose it in the couch. It would fall out of my pocket, slip down in between the couch cushions. I would think I'd lose it all the time, and I'd always find it in the couch. And then one day, I lost it, and I tore everything apart, and I could not find it. I went through the couch cushions. I went through my room. I completely destroyed the house looking for this. I told my parents to look out. They knew, what the knife was and its significance to me. So did my younger sister, who still lived in the house with us. And we were in a small, 900 square foot ranch. Nothing, it's not like a huge house where things can just go missing like crazy. Searched forever for about 3 months, continually kept checking, and eventually gave up and basically just chalked it up to I had lost something that was very dear to me, and it sucked. I cried and was hysterical about it, and it was just terrible. Fast forward about 5 years, and I come home one day. At this point, I am starting my first year of college. I come home, go to lay down and take a nap before I go to work, and sitting on my bedside table where I charge my phone, completely cleared off table, is my knife. And so I immediately, I grab it, and I almost crying. I'm so happy, and I run out and I go to my mom, and I'm like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you found this. Thank you so much." And she's very confused. She's like, "Oh, I didn't find it. I don't know where that came from. I thought you lost that a long time ago." So I go over to my dad, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm so glad that you found it. Mom said she didn't find it. I'm assuming you did." And he also had no idea what I was talking about. My dad didn't even know what the knife was. And so finally I went to my sister, and she was still younger, and we didn't get along then. She basically told me to shut up and get out of her room, and she doesn't touch my stuff. But nobody in the house has any idea how this knife got on my bedside table. I tore the entire house apart 5 years prior, so I know it wasn't sitting there for 5 years. It just kind of showed up, and I still have it today, and there's no explanation as to where it went for those 5 years, but it was gone for sure. I didn't have it for a very long time, and then one day it was just there. So I don't know if that's ghosts, I don't know if it's gremlins or fairies or whatever else it could possibly be, some rift in dimensions, but that knife was definitely gone 100%, and it just showed back up one day out of nowhere. So appreciate you taking the call. I love the show. Keep up the good work, and I'll keep listening. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, this sounds like apportation to me. Now, an apport is the alleged paranormal transfer of an object from one place to another, or the appearance of an object from an unknown source. Apports are often associated with seances or poltergeist-like activity. So yeah, sounds like a apport to me. So thank you, Jesse, for sharing that entry. I get your attachment to your knife. Ever since I was probably 10 years old, I've carried around a little pocket knife made by Old Timer. My dad gave me my first one some 35 years ago, and I still have it, but I bought a newer one to carry around. One that's not so wore out. But the point is, a man loves his knife, and I get it. Don't even get me started on my kitchen knives. So it may be that connection that helped bring Jesse's knife back. Though I couldn't even begin to explain to you how. Regardless of how or why, it was a great little story, and we appreciate you taking the time to share it here with us. Alright folks, it's time to punch your ticket and go beyond, where I have stories of missing time, more strange sounds, and even a Bigfoot experience. To hear all of that, and to become a member of the Monster Squad. Simply visit patreon.com and search for Monsters Among Us. Then join the $5 level. Or if you're on a budget and you still want to support the program, join the $1 level to get all the main show stuff absolutely ad-free. $1 is ad-free. $5 gives you 20 to 30-minute extended episodes each and every week. And don't forget, you can do all this ad-free for 7 full days. Now, of course, if you like what you hear, I wouldn't mind if you stuck around for a month or two. That certainly would help us out. As you know, here's the best part of all of this. Over in the beyond, you get to hear calls like Patty's out of Ohio.
Hi, this is Patty again from Toledo, Ohio. I have another experience. This one is similar to my last one in the fact that it is kind of like a dream, or at least that's how I remember it. This happened probably 2011 or 2012. I had just moved back in with my parents, and my brother was living there at the time as well. We're both adults. And there was just this one night, I went to bed, and at some point in time, I guess I woke up. All I remember is I'm standing in the backyard looking up at the sky, and the sky is completely black. It's just blacker than black.